Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
A little technical difficulty here, but I believe we're good now. I hate to be late. I hope everybody's doing well. Appreciate everybody joining us this evening. Dr. Griffin Jordan's got you gonna do two presentations tonight? One, she's got two.
Yeah.
Yo, what was that love connection, Chuck Woolery with back in two and two? She's doing two tonight, so I'm excited. She does a great job. I learn something every time she does this because now, you can tell from the color of my beard, it's been a day or two since I was in school for real. I did the last, 10, 12 years of my career in the central office. That ain't working. Money for nothing. But Dr. Griffin Jordan's on the line every day, and she brings such a wealth of knowledge and what's going on today, not what went on 25 years ago when I was a principal. I left the principalship 24 years ago, so been a day since I did it. But then I supervised principals for a long time before I became the deputy. Then I supervised everybody, but it's been a day. So I'm excited for her presentations tonight. I want to look at our weekly schedule right quick to keep everybody in the loop of where we are. Remember, the fourth week we'll do our case study. I'll talk more about it next week. I want to talk about our weekly assignments. Here's some things that came up from our first assignment, which was due last week, and then of course this second one's due this week. And remember how it works is, so by Sunday of this week, your OMA task 1 is due. That for this week, we meet on Tuesday, regardless of whether we meet Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. I have different classes. You know that your work's due the following Sunday. So OMA task 1, many of you have already done it, and I thank you. And you can go to discussion board, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right. Elisa Porcelli, is she with us tonight? What a killer job she did on task.
Yes, I'm here.
And what I commend you. Beautiful job on task 1. You're a better student than I am teacher. I can tell you that, because that was a great job. I appreciate it so much. So if y'all want to see the guide, as good as one as I've seen, you can go to discussion board and see hers. It's great. It is absolutely great. So kudos for her. On our activities this week, here are some things that came out. Again, Elisa picked out unlocked classroom doors. I'm telling you folks, I hate to bring this up, but the last shooter got in an unlocked classroom door. And even if it's not a shooter, kids can go in there and you'll have a lot of sexual misconduct. You know, there's 5 sexual misconducts that count against your persistently dangerous calculation. And unlocked rooms is where 95% of that stuff happens. Kids find a place that's out of view of everybody and get in there, and it goes bad. So those unlocked classrooms are a haven for those 5 sexual infractions that count against your persistently dangerous calculation. Need to keep those rooms locked. Lisa made a good point on that. Crystal may be with us. I haven't looked to see who everybody's with us. Unsupervised students that milling around in the hall with nobody that's actually on a schedule to be supervising them. Well, that's a biggie on nonfeasance. Had a negligence on the basis of nonfeasance, had a duty to act and didn't. You can't leave students unsupervised. You just can't do that. Let's see. I think buzzing people in, that might have been Alex. Yeah, I think that was Alex. Great job on OMA as well, Alex Birdie. And buzzing people in, not even looking to. What good does it do to have security on the front door if you push the buzzer, they just let you in and don't even look? You know, you got to really work with your front office staff about, make sure that you know who it is before you click the button. I know you're busy, parents are calling, kids are screaming. The nurse's office is always in the front. Here's a couple ideas for you. When you become principal of the school, here's 3 things that cannot happen in your front office. Number 1, we can't be processing discipline through your front office. If if your SROs or teachers or whoever APs are dragging kids in for discipline, make sure they don't do it through your front office. Have a back door or somewhere else where you process your discipline. You should never do that in public. Number two, package deliveries. Don't let the delivery man come dumping stuff in your front office all the time, because that's unnecessary traffic, people coming in and out. No deliveries in the front office. And number three, your nurse's station should not be anywhere near your front office. Those three things are like a fire alarm going off all day long. And you got to project a sense of calm and control for the parents and the people in your building. Those three things make you look like the Three Stooges. No packages, no first aid, no discipline in the front office. If those are in the front office, first thing by executive command, those got to go. And you got to work with your office staff to be calm and patient and see what's going on. Try to have a switchboard set up away from the main office to try to direct some of that traffic away. But I know they get busy, they get distracted. Somebody rings the bell, they just reach over and hit the button and let them in. That's not good. Doesn't do any good to have all that security if you're just going to let people in. And then the last one, I think Daniel Simmons mentioned this. And this, we're all guilty of this, mobile units, having all the security on the building. We ain't worried about people stealing the building. We're worried about them harming kids, and then have zero security on mobile units. Just walk right up to them, walk right in. They're after the students, not the buildings. You can't allow your mobile units to be soft targets. That's you're not understanding what the objective here is. The objective in all this safety and security is to keep kids safe and your faculty safe. It's not to secure the building so people won't steal something. And you do all this security on your main building and you leave your mobile units just sitting out there like sitting ducks. No security on them, no fence, no gate, nothing. People just walk right up, no locks on the doors. You got to understand the whole point of this is to keep, is to be a champion for kids and faculty to keep them safe. And Daniel made a good point on that one. So I appreciate those. Those were kind of the highlights. I read a lot of good stuff this week, but I just want to make sure that I always try to, the things that catch my eye, I keep a red book. As I grade this is Gardner Webb red books. These are like test booklets back in the old days. Blue books, we have red books. And when I grade, everything I grade, I sit with this book open and I jot my little notes down about what caught my eye. And it gives me an idea of how good a job that we're doing. So I want to cover one thing. The task twos that have come in already have been great. Just as a reminder, in under OMA task and prompts, I've got this guide again. We're moving to that this week. Make sure that you follow this guide. Y'all are doing a great job. I didn't see anything bad, but this is one of those helpful hint kind of things. And then the other thing is make sure when you're looking at your prompts, make sure that before you turn it in for me to look at, that you've got, the boxes right here are your elements that you got to make sure you include. Just use them as a checklist to make sure you got everything. But the quality of work has been good. I have no complaints. Not whining and complaining, just a reminder, double check these before you send something in. And as you finish up task 1 this week, and some of you have already moved, I've got a couple already task 3, but as you move to task 2, there's a handy dandy guide to help you. Remember, we go fast. I had a call from Kishana a while ago. You don't have to form a PLC this semester. You already did that. You already know how to do that. Don't let that kind of stuff slow you down. You learned that last semester, and there's no advantage in having you do that again. You've already learned it one time. We go fast now. You know how to do all this stuff. Go fast. Don't let me slow you down either. I'll be right with you. I'll grade every day, as y'all have already figured out. I'll be right with you. There's Daniel. Was that an Ohio State shirt? I'll talk louder and wave my hands more for you then, Daniel, if you're wearing an Ohio State shirt.
Yeah, you'll have to talk slow for me. I'm sorry.
Oh, Buckeyes. Oh, no. Great place. Daniel, thank you for you picked that. That was a good catch on the soft target on the mobile units. That was a good one.
That's always been my concern since I've been there, is they've just have that gate to the neighborhood and people come in and I'm like, and we're going right into the mobile units.
Makes no sense at all. Had the same thing happen when I was principal at Eastway Junior High in Charlotte 30 years ago. Exact same thing. We had our mobile units on the back, and the gate had been down, the fence had been torn down for years. The first thing I said, we need to put this fence back up. But the neighborhood uses that to cut across to the food line, and they can go around. Our mobile units are completely exposed in the back. Now that's kind of neighborhood where they actually pulled a car on our campus over the holiday weekend and pulled it up under the breezeway of the gym and set it on fire. We had bullet holes every Monday we came in to see what was shot up. So it was kind of relevant. We had guns, we had shooting. I mean, that was a really, really tough place. And our mobile units, and people just didn't understand that. We're not trying to protect the buildings, folks. We're trying to protect the kids. So that was a great catch. All right, let me stop my share. And Dr. Griffin Jordan, I'm here, take the wheel. What was that, Carrie Underwood? Jesus, take the wheel. Take the wheel. Thank you again. Y'all doing great work. I can't say enough good things about you.
Okay, so this evening we're going to cover two topics, facilities and budget management, as well as human resource management. Now, facilities, we're going to talk about that first, and then we're going to break it down and kind of just focus on the human resource management side of things. So I'm going to share my screen. All right. Okay, so managing school facilities. If you're like I was before really getting in the game, I'm thinking facilities is your brick and mortar, your actual building, and managing the building. It is so much more than just the building. Managing facilities in school means the physical, educational, and financial components of your whole organization. That is everything that is composed of the facilities management. So we're going to talk about that school organization and the day-to-day operations that you have to manage when you're running your school. And as I go through, I've taken off I've made it really little up here so I can see my whole screen. So please, if you have a question, I'll kind of pause every now and then, just kind of blurt out, or if you have a comment, please share so we can kind of interact while we're going through this. Okay, so how do you plan? So when you're looking at your school facilities maintenance planning, there's so many factors, as I mentioned. So there are 6 main factors, and we're going to talk about each one of them. First, you have occupant and your health and safety, as we just talked about. Those mobile units, that is a concern for all schools that are over capacity, because that's the first thing they do is bring in a mobile unit. That is something that you have to consider when you're planning your facilities. As you see here, scheduled drills and inspection. So this is the safety component. As an administrator, you're going to have drills. You have to have a fire drill every single month. You have to have your electrical work inspected. You have to have your cafeteria. They'll come and inspect the cafeteria area. And then in addition to that monthly fire drill, you're going to have lockdown drills. You're going to have a tornado drill. We've even started having an earthquake drill where the students get under the desk. And I know earthquakes don't usually happen here. And we had to have that conversation with students because they're like, why? I don't live in California. Why am I having to get under the desk? Anything can happen. So just that preparedness is what we want to make sure our students understand. In addition, you must conduct an inspection every other week, like every 2 weeks. You've got to go around your building and check for emergency lighting, making sure the doors, the fire doors open and close as they should, lighting is appropriate, All of that must be done in addition to conducting your fire drill and every other drill. This could get you in serious trouble if you don't. This is not an optional thing, it is a mandatory thing. Our district recently, because principals delegate, so this was something that was done by my lead custodian and my assistant principal. I used to be an assistant principal, so I knew exactly what to do and how to do it, but I was not doing it currently. And they indicated that they wanted the principals to still be involved, and, you know, because the buck stops with you. So if something goes wrong and you weren't aware of that emergency light, or the fire, this particular fire pool was not working, that comes back on you. So I can appreciate that they want us to still be involved. That is something that has to take place. So, okay, moving along, occupant health and safety. So school improvement team. There are going to be some terms as I go through my presentation that you're going to see on several of my slides. School improvement team is one of them. I'm a large proponent of school improvement teams, coming through as I was a teacher, as I was a counselor, and even as an assistant principal. School improvement team meetings, they weren't fun. It was more of a chore. It was not, I didn't get what I should have gotten out of them. When it's done correctly, it is the best thing ever. You have your team, and you're still the leader now, but you have a team of teachers, counselors, community, parents, students, all coming together to help you, because you can't do it all by yourself. They're coming to help you decide to make decisions on handling your school facilities. You know, ask the student, you know, what types of events would students like? Ask the parent, how can I bring more parents in on our awards night? Ask the teachers, how can we boost motivation? You have all the stakeholders right there. Use it for what it's worth, and devise a nice, solid, structured school improvement plan with your school improvement team. So the school improvement team will support you in the occupant health and safety component as well. We've talked about drills, critical incident response team, or the CIRT team. Everybody has to have this type of team in your school, especially with the way the world is going now. It is very important that you have knowledge on your critical incidents responses. What happens if you do have an active shooter? What happens if you have to evacuate your building? Where do you go? Who calls parents? How do you get to where you're going? Do you need to go to the sister school down the street by bus, or do you just need to go outside in the back or in the parking lot? All these things need to be discussed at the very beginning of the school year, in your staff retreat and your intro meeting with your school. There's also a black box. Have to have that black box, because anything can happen with computers. You need to have a hard copy of everything, all of your students' names, parents' names, contact numbers, everything that is crucial for the running of your school if something were to happen and you had to evacuate. All that is extremely important. Renovations and updates. So as far as health and safety with your renovations, again, when you do your inspections, you're going to see if there are any types of renovations needed. You're going to see if there are updates to maintain the health and safety of your school. Mental health, school nurse, psychologist, you need space. So this is a safety component. Make sure you have space for your school nurse. And as we stated earlier, you can't have the school nurse as soon as you walk in the front office, the school nurse office right there with sick kids screaming, crying. Have another space instead of the front office. Schools, safe school trainings. This is something that everyone does in our district. This is where you are trained online for harassment. You have harassment training. You have the lockdown trainings. You have bully trainings. Anything that they feel that you should know, we get that. So that's a part of our safety, our health and safety training. And then, of course, your student code of conduct should model safety for your students and your staff. Okay, I'm going to go through a little bit quicker. Implementation. Okay, so this right here, this is how you implement what you want to happen on a day-to-day basis, and then evaluate its effectiveness. So we have scheduling. You're going to see that a little bit more in the different slides. Culture, you're going to see culture, because your school facilities, the maintenance and the planning for your facility, you know, it's driven by your culture, your school culture. So teacher working condition survey, that helps you to evaluate teacher satisfaction. You have the North Carolina Educator Effectiveness System that helps to evaluate what your teachers are doing and if they are meeting the standards that they should be meeting. You have your school improvement team that helps you implement things, and then they'll help you evaluate as well to make sure things are going well. NC report card that comes out every year that is known as a known tool and is public knowledge, so you can go and check out your report card statistics. Professional development and PLCs. Okay, so these two really help you implement your plan for your day-to-day management of your facilities, of your instruction. And it's extremely important that you have a professional development plan that helps teachers grow, and your professional learning communities where they can sit together and realize what your vision is for your school and help to implement that. Okay, capital planning. So this is where capital planning pretty much is if you have facilities, you need to get upgrades, or you need to add on, or you need to tear down and rebuild. So your capital planning, this does deal a lot with your physical component of your building. It is very necessary that you look at your schools, your past, your present, and your projecting operating and maintenance costs. You should always take a look at what has happened in the past, because that's going to help you drive your future, whether you're looking at scheduling, whether you're looking at technology, whether you're looking at your facilities. And you can kind of guide yourself as far as, okay, so in the next couple of years, we'll probably need to replace this, or this is new, we'll have 5 years that we shouldn't have to worry about it. This right here is under maintenance. This right here is under warranty. All these things are helping you drive your facilities management plan. Also, the district strategic plan. This is where you have bond referendums, your LEA budget. This all comes into capital planning. Right now, my district is looking at, we're finishing up one high school. They'll start next year. And then next up is another high school that they're going to, DSA, they're going to rebuild DSA in another location. So this is all coming from the referendums. So it wasn't just all of a sudden the school said, okay, we just need a new building. Trust me, it took tons and lots and tons of work for them to sit, devise the plan. They had to say and prove that they needed a new building. So they've had tons of documentation through the years that show that they needed to build another facility. Okay, so training and managing staff. This is where your HR management comes in. This is where you're hiring, and we're going to go into some good detail about that in my next presentation. Some hiring, onboarding, and exit interviews. This helps you manage your facilities. And of course, you still have culture, you have the PDs, the PLCs, all this still comes into play. School improvement team is still there. Your evaluation system and continuous feedback all goes into your training and your managing staff for your facilities maintenance plan. Okay, so your learning environment. This is where the students and their learning environment comes in. Look at your outdoor learning space. COVID brought on another whole world for us. We are outside just as much as we're inside. We have so many additional picnic tables. We have an whole outdoor classroom. None of these things were there before COVID. So this is good. And of course, you're going to need to maintain those outdoor spaces. So it's great to have them, but you have to have your plan for maintaining them and keeping them safe. Again, you're outdoors. So is it safe? How safe are your students when they are outdoors in their outdoor learning environment? That needs to be considered as well. And then lastly, your stakeholders. You have your PTSA. They should have a part in your vision, and they should understand what the vision of your school is to help you plan. They do fundraising, they come in to volunteer, but everyone has to have a shared vision. So make sure you bring them in. You also have your district strategic plan. You have to put forth that vision that the district has. You have to highlight those areas that your staff needs to improve on to make sure everyone is reaching that vision for the district. Community partners, business alliances, all those are your stakeholders' needs and vision, the shared vision. Okay, so funding. All that I just talked about is wonderful, and it's a whole lot, but you've got to have money to do all of that. One resource that I have found really helpful is the North Carolina Public School Budget. It's an information analysis. I think, yeah, I do have the link that you can click on. When you're looking at school budgets and funding for your facilities, it is best practice to highlight that Board of Education policy manual to tell you what is what should be done here, who should be responsible for doing this, when should it be done. All that is located in your policy manual. You also have your NC report card to kind of snapshot on per pupil funding. It talks about your teacher, your high quality teachers, your teacher working condition survey that will highlight your areas of strength and areas of weakness when you are looking to put together your budget. Okay, so here we're moving into the budget part. You have federal money, you have state money, you have district money, and you have your school-based funding. So when you're managing your school facilities, each of these components take a part of making sure you get everything that you need for your school and your students. If you look in the middle, it says source of expenditures. And all this I got out of the North Carolina data analysis that I showed you the link for in the previous slide. All this information comes from there. It's very, you might want to look just to kind of see it. It breaks down all the counties or the LEAs. You can get pretty much any information that you want to from there. So you have state, federal, and local. So this is for the state of North Carolina. This is the approximates 2021, 2022, as far as the funding amount. If you look over to the left at federal funds received for the state, you'll see that you're going to get a chunk of money for your Title I programming. You're going to get money for child nutrition, your vocational education like CTE, your IDEA. And then if you notice, it says most federal funds are targeted towards specific populations such as low-income children or handicapped children. These funds cannot be used for anything else. You have to use them for what their purpose is, and you have to document how you used it for the purposes that they are specified for. For your state funding, types of state funding, there are three main types. You have your position, which is like your teachers, administration, your instructional support personnel. Large chunk of the funding goes to that entity. Then you have your dollar, which is like your TAs, your textbooks, class materials and supplies, central office administration goes out of that pot. And then the categorical, that's your at-risk student services, your limited English proficient students, your students with disabilities, and such. So that's where that comes from. So that's your federal and your state. When you break it down to your district, I did want to highlight this. This was another chart that was shown. Very interesting. So how do charter schools affect your LEA or your district funding? So the state gives you funding based on your students' enrollment. They call that the average daily membership. So the number of students you have enrolled. That's why you see your administration, your power school data manager, your front office personnel going crazy the first 10 days of school and all the way up until the 20th day, but we try to knock it out in day 10. So for the first 20 days, they're calling to the house, they're the social workers doing house calls. We're trying to get as many students as possible because that's going to determine how much money you get. If you're like, okay, well, you know, we're at 80% of where we were last year, they'll come, your money's going to tank. You've got to get those students in. And if you notice way back in 2004, that pink at the top, that's the number of students going to charter schools. Okay, so now going down to over to the right to 2023, where we are now, you notice the green, we were growing. I mean, just growing. And then around 2011, we kind of stabled, you know, we were kind of stable and then we're dropping. But if you notice 23, the charter school, that pink has skyrocketed. So that means we're getting less money because our students are not coming to your LEA. They're going to a charter school, and the charter schools get money for their daily membership. So that's why it's very important. You hear a lot of talk about charter schools, and you know, we're at a push now in Durham. We have tons of charter schools. We're at a push now to get our students back from charter schools because the population in Durham is growing, but our student membership in our schools is not. And, you know, we're getting thousands and thousands of people moving in, you know, every year, and we're not seeing an increase in our students because charter schools are there. So
Dr. Griffin
yes.
Jordan, can I interject?
Yes.
To get down and kind of down in the weeds of funding, school districts have to have a fund balance where they fund themselves the first month of school, and they project enrollment and they allot you teachers on that. Now, after that first month, that first 20 days, whatever you've got, that's what you get funded on. Now, let's be clear. The state does not send North or South Carolina, does not send all the money per pupil then. They break it up into 10 payments. In South Carolina, 9 payments. And they take your average daily membership and they subtract the average daily attendance, and you don't get paid for students, even though they might be on the roll. If they don't come, they subtract your attendance. So let's use some round figures. Let's say it's $8,000 a year that the state's sending per pupil to your district. That means that it comes in 10 monthly installments of $800 if you spend it correctly. And you didn't hire a teacher that wasn't certified or out of field or something. They reimburse you, but they subtract your attendance. So if your attendance for that month was 95% as a district, they subtract 5% of that. So instead of getting 800, you get $760 per pupil. They don't pay for them if they don't come. That's very important. That's why you're out beating the bushes, because the district paid the first month. And if you're short a bunch of teachers or a bunch of students and they don't pay for as many teachers, one, you got to lay them off or you got to move them, or two, you got to eat the cost of hiring that teacher that month. So that's why it's real important, as Dr. Griffin Jordan said, to find your students, because otherwise the district loses a bunch of money. Now, in terms of charter schools, you hear this all the time. Well, that kid enrolled at that charter school and they got all the money. No, when he shows up on your roll, if he comes back, if he shows up on your roll the second month, again, they only sent the money for the first month. Now you'll get paid for that kid. That's why you want to get them back. It's because you'll get the money for them. It is not true that charters take all the money and then they come back, they run them off and they come back. And then no, you get if they come back, the money comes back with them. So, so don't throw charter schools under the bus for stealing your money. If they take your kids, they get paid for them. Of course, they got to pay their people. But if they come back, the money comes back with them. So it's important to try to maintain your enrollment, find them, get them, so your district doesn't take a big beating on the first month of school and they paid too many teachers and the state doesn't reimburse them. Or you hired somebody out of field or that wasn't certified, then the state won't pay that salary. So it's important to make sure that all those things are taken care of properly through personnel. But remember, you only get paid for the kids who come that month. And then next month, it's the same thing. How many came that month? You get paid for how many. So it's not like all the money was paid out and now you got a kid from a charter school you get no money for. Nope, his money came back with him. I want to mention quickly in this, she went through this fundraising. We do want parents and other groups involved in fundraising, but now remember, you can delegate the responsibility, the activity, but not the responsibility. You will always be responsible as the principal for whatever funds they raise to make sure that they're distributed properly, they're planned for, that they were seeded. You have to follow the same rules as you would if you were running the fundraiser. And you can't say, well, I turned it over to them. No, you're responsible. If they steal it all or don't deliver whatever they sold or the money gets absconded with, you're on the hook as the principal. It's called failure to maintain fiscal control. So the notion that I don't want to do fundraising, I'll just turn it over to my parent groups or my athletic groups. No, that's not true. You're still responsible for it. And that's an awful lot of trust placed in them. So you got to make sure that you keep up with that funding on the local. Capital allotments, capital is local money. It is not state money. It is not federal money. Capital is local money. And the issue with that is that's what maintains your buildings and grounds. And it's up to you and your district to keep them up. As Dr. Griffin Jordan said, you got to know what's going on in your building because nobody's going to come and do that for you. And it's local money. There is no state oversight of that or federal oversight of that. That's you and your maintenance department. So you got to, if you're feeding your teachers or giving shirts, you better make sure your maintenance men get one too. Because that's completely a local initiative, is to keep up your buildings and grounds. Completely local. It is not state. It is not federal. Now let's talk about federal right quick. The point on federal is you don't misspend it but one time. The restrictions are very tight on it. It goes as she said, it goes exactly to what they said it was supposed to, and you better document it. That's exactly what you spend it on. Federal money is, that's why when we do the master schedule, our federal programs come first, because we don't have any leeway with them. What they say we're supposed to do is what we better do. And we have to make that a priority in our schedule. And then state law, then local board policy, then our performance data in terms of who's teaching what, and then teacher input. That's why it has to go that way, because the money follows that way. So you have to do that. And then the last thing is, before we go for any further, Dr. Griffin Jordan, I want you one more time to tell these folks how important it is to involve your school improvement team in developing your local school budget, what protection that gives you and power that gives you in your building.
Oh, sure. Again, your first thought is, okay, I'm having a bunch of people come and they're going to tell me how to run my school. It is not like that at all. So, that is a misconception. If it's run the wrong way, possibly you may have some strong-willed teachers that if you're not facilitating it, will think that they are running the school. But if it's run the right way, you have support. Whatever you're doing in your school, whatever new initiatives that you want to put in place, when you push it out to the school, you're going to say, the school improvement team has met, not you, the school improvement team, which you all are invited to come to the meetings each and every time. So that's going to kind of shut people up a little bit, because you can't complain too much if you weren't sitting you were invited to sit at the table to decide and you decided not to sit at the table and decisions were made. That's on you. So when the school improvement team makes decisions and you push it out to the staff, you're going to be able to sit back because your school improvement team members are going to push that agenda for you. You're not going to have to do too much or say too much, but you're just going to have to monitor and maintain. So your school improvement team will sit with you, look at the data based on if it's a parent, student, teacher. Everybody's going to bring their needs on the table. So you're not going to have to think about anybody that's not there. Everybody will bring their needs to the table to find a plan that meets everyone's needs. And when you push it out to the staff, you will more than likely have buy-in because their peers are the ones that's presenting it, not just administration. And that goes a long way. And you can still have your influence. You're going to have your influence. You can still get the things done that you need to get done, but it's just wonderful to not have to do it yourself and to climb that hill alone, because if your teachers see that you're trying to do something all alone by yourself, you're going to have some that just because they're going to say something, they're going to have something to say. So that's my spiel on the school improvement team. It drives your school. It's your foundation.
It gives you support. When I supervised principals, the dumbest principals thought that budgeting meant dividing it up equally and everybody had some. That's not what budgeting is. Budgeting is putting the money behind your priorities of your school improvement team and your school improvement plan. That's what budgeting is. Here's our school improvement team who has developed a school improvement plan. They have looked at our data and said, these are the priorities in our school. And we put money behind them. Dividing it up equally doesn't help anybody. Then everybody's mad. Everybody complains. Crystal, you had a question. You have your hand up. We'll go to you. Unmute yourself.
Yes, sir. When I had to meet with the principal and the bookkeeper about our budget, I just want to say that I know you all said that it depends on the number of students that's there, but they also told me or explained to me that's why they stay on the teachers about taking attendance.
That is correct, because they subtract your absenteeism. That's a great point, Crystal.
Yes.
Thank you for reminding me. That's what I was talking about. They don't go by the number that's enrolled. They go by the number every month, and when they send you your check, they send it on how many showed up. And that's why every day or two, they're on you about making sure you take attendance. Because you only get paid for the ones that come. And they take that from your monthly check that they send to the district for the number that showed up. They subtract the absenteeism. That's why there's a difference in average daily membership and average daily attendance. They only pay for average daily attendance. That is exactly right. It costs you money. Every one of the kids that don't come that day, you don't get paid that day. And remember, we got to pay everybody that's working there. And that's how districts get in trouble financially, because they got to cover the shortfall out of the local budget. There was a time prior to COVID that school districts would sometimes carry 2 or 3 month operating budget, and they would have that much on hand money. Now they barely have enough for the first month. So they, again, whatever shortfall that month, if you say your attendance was only 90% and they took 10% of your money, and it took 99% of it to run your district, the locals got to make up that additional 9% that month. They can't do that. Can't do it on and on. Tell you that. They might do it for a time or two. But there's another superintendent bit the dust this week, local to Charlotte, not in Charlotte, but local to Charlotte. Another one bit the dust this week because they couldn't pay people. Been a problem for over a year in COVID. They couldn't pay people because they couldn't get kids to come to school, and they didn't lay anybody off. That was a big deal for their school board, is we're not laying anybody off. And they kept people on the payroll, even though schools were closed and kids weren't coming, they weren't getting money. And of course, who always takes the blame for that? The superintendent. So we had one resign this week, or this about 10 days ago. And so, I mean, that's what happens. I mean, it doesn't go well for you. And you can say, well, this was an act of God. That kind of doesn't matter. School board, they have amnesia. They're the ones that said we don't want to lay anybody off, but then when they ran funds short and couldn't pay people, it was the superintendent's problem. That's his problem now. So that's why your principal's out there, because he's getting beaten up or she's getting beaten up twice a month. The principal's beating over attendance, and so that's why they're beating you up. No students, no money. That's the way the world works. Excellent point, Dr. Griffith Jordan. We're back to you.
All right. I did want to highlight what you said. The money follows the student. So that's why we're trying to get the students back so that we could, our funding goes up too. But when they go to the charter school gets the money. When the student comes back, the money comes back with the student. Next, we have budgeting, accounting, and reporting. I kind of wanted to talk about the differences of those and some things that you'll need to just make sure you are cognizant of as you're taking the leadership role in your school. This can mean your job or no job. This could mean jail or no jail. So please make sure when you're anything that you're dealing with money and budgeting, you are on point. Ask questions if you don't know. For budgeting, this is where your school improvement team again will come into play. You have to set your priorities based on the needs, okay? And as Dr. Lamb mentioned, you're looking at your federal first, your state, then you're looking at your local, you're looking at your EOC scores, your academic data, then you're looking at your teacher needs. School improvement plan, prior year planning, make sure you review past years. Just as I said at the beginning of this presentation, with your facilities management, you've got to look back. You've got to plan, look back. You can only get better in the future if you know what happened in the past and you grow from it, learn from it. So make sure you're keeping a track of what's happened in the past with your budgeting. Plan to cover the first month's needs with existing funds. Just talked about that. And then we'll talk about the PMR on the reporting side, but every single month, a PMR has to be submitted. Your principal has to submit a PMR, and this will determine your funding. So accounting, every school has a bookkeeper or a treasurer. This is one of the most important positions ever. You need to make sure that you trust this person, that they are very, very well organized. They have a structured process in their accounting for your school's funding and spending money. You have to track all the money that is spent. You always have to know where every piece of money is going, because you could be audited at any time. So this is the payroll. This is where you'll have your certified teachers. That's the payroll. So they're going to be taking leave time. Your bookkeeper has to document their leave time. Is it sick leave, annual leave, personal leave? All of that comes into place. Your substitutes, but teachers out, substitute has to get paid, half a day, whole day, they have to get paid. You're making sure that your classified staff are signing in, checking in every day with their timesheets. Timesheets must be accurate. Then you have a checking account. This checking account is for your school. It's not a district account. You'll have a checking account for your particular school, and you have to maintain, make sure you don't default on and go in the red for your checking account. So you have to sit with your bookkeeper to make sure on a regular basis that all the money is flowing in and flowing out appropriately. So with your state and local funds, you have line item. There's a line item software. We use AS 400. I believe we're going to get a new one. This is where you do all of your purchase orders, your requisitions, you make budget amendments, different things like that. Find out. I did not know what I just said. I did not know that a couple of years ago. All those words were foreign to me. You've got to have somebody, when you step into that office, you're relying on that person to teach you. If you're not able to learn before you get there, and a lot of things you're not going to be able to learn. You can't learn everything about being a principal before you are a principal. Some things is on the job training. So I've learned a lot about budgeting and accounting. And I was fortunate to have someone that was very precise. She had notebooks and folders lined up for everything, color coded. It makes you feel good because you're not going to go to jail because she's on point, and you know that you have learned what you need to learn. And also inventory and supplies, whatever your teachers need, their supplies for their classrooms, any type of materials. All this is part of your accounting. You'll need to know, okay, am I going to pull this from my checking account to cover this? Can I cover it with state or federal funding? Because some things you can't. You need to know that. Don't misspend the money. Then some of it will be local, the local money that the funding that you receive. So you just have to know what can come out of what line item or funding pot. And then we have reporting. So PMR, Principal's Monthly Report. This is where you have lots of information contained within your average daily membership. As Dr. Lamb mentioned, this is the number of students who are enrolled in your school. That's that first 20 days. You need to get them in, pull them in, go to the house, knock on the door, offer them a ride, get them into the school. You have your ADA. This is your average daily attendance. If you only have 70% of your students coming on a regular basis, you're messing up the district's funding. You need to get the students have to come. We've had talks about that lately, because attendance is a problem, not just for my school or your school. It's a problem in general. Since COVID, students have found that they can do work online, turn it in. We are a Canvas district, so all of our teachers since COVID have been taught and trained to put assignments on Canvas. Your daily lesson plans, everything is on Canvas. So now we have very smart students. They look on Canvas, do the assignment, turn it in on time, but they weren't at school. That's a problem. So that's what we're working through now as a school and as a district, and I'm pretty sure as a state, because one thing that we had before COVID that we don't have now, we used to take parents to court, like truancy, like court, real court. We don't do that anymore. We have truancy committees where, you know, it's not an officer or a law enforcement type thing. It's just a, you know, paid personnel sitting with parents and the school trying to, I guess, mediate getting the student, you know, I don't know, but it's not as effective. It's really not as effective as when we would call the parents and they would face having to go to court, get off of work and report to court because their student did not attend school. So since we don't have that now, attendance, I've noticed across the district, probably I haven't looked at state statistics, but I'm pretty sure across the state, attendance is taking a little hit. We need something more aggressive, in my opinion, to make sure parents get the students to school. And then you have your initial enrollment. That is your E1s. So that's the attendance that you take the first 20 days. The very first day the student comes, they're E1'd in. And that is like, that's the first day that you've shown up. So after that point, after they're E1'd in, then they are either counted absent or present. But that E1 is very, very important. That's that first initial enrollment date. Fiscal year audits. So we have fundraising. We have your ESSER funds. Excuse me. That's dwindling out now. We have grants, gift, and I put fundraising again for some reason. I guess I want to talk about fundraising, so I'll talk about it on the next slide. And then at the bottom, it says allotment review. So the allotment review, we have an allotment meeting every year in the spring. And this is where you're given, my chief financial officer for the district has given all the principals a layout. You know, here are, going back again, like I said, prior year planning. Based on the last couple of years, has been your enrollment. This is your projected enrollment for next year. So based on that, these are the number of teachers you're going to have. These are the number of teacher assistants you're going to have based on this number. These are your allotted positions. So that is that meeting that you go to, and you go in, and if you think you're going to need more positions for some area, or you want to maybe use your number of allotments differently. For instance, if you have 2 counselors and you want to use one of those positions for a math teacher because your math scores need improvement, so you need to make the classes smaller, you need to hire a new math teacher, then that's that allotment review meeting where you're going to say, my allotted positions are 20, but I have 2 counselors. I want to take one of those counselors, move them into a teacher position. So we'll move that position into a teacher position. So those are the types of meetings, conversations you'll have at that meeting. Okay, and then fundraising at the end, we have a couple of things. Fundraising, you probably are not going to be able to get away from it. So embrace it for what it's good for, and just be mindful and very, very be a stickler for making sure that everyone that's doing the fundraising is following the rules. Again, my bookkeeper, she's a stickler for fundraising. You cannot keep money overnight. She really doesn't even like to have cash. She really would prefer to go online and do the online payment system, the payment portal where you put in your card and pay it that way. That's what she prefers. But if there is cash money involved, it has to be submitted, receipted, and deposited that same day. I remember working games late at night, 10, 11 o'clock, varsity football games ending. And I was the admin in charge for that evening. The officer on duty would follow me with my bank deposit box or bag. He would follow me to our bank, our school's bank, to watch me deposit the money from that evening. And I wouldn't have it any other way because I don't want anybody trying to rob me. So he follows me and, you know, I take it in. I can't keep it and be like, well, okay, so I'm going to take it at 8 o'clock in the morning when it's nice and bright outside. I'll just keep it in my car. I'll put it in my trunk until the next day. You can't do that. So it's nice to have someone, if you do have to do that in the evening, to have an officer to follow you to make sure you're safe when you're having to do that. But you've got to do it. You can't get around that. Be involved, as Dr. Lamb mentioned, with PTSA fundraising. Don't just say, I don't want to do it. I'm letting them do the Krispy Kreme donut sale. I don't want to have anything to do with it. It's going to fall on you. Is if they are using your name in any way, if they're using your school's name, and all PTSAs should be the ABC schools, PTSA, they're going to be using your name. That falls back on you. Anything that has your name on it, or anybody that's raising money for you, for your school, that falls back on you. So please make sure you are involved with your PTSA fundraising. They have rules and regulations to follow, their budget, their checking account. You need to see how they're spending the money as well. Again, they're spending it on the behalf of your school. So don't allow them to say, well, you know, this is a separate entity. You know, we're not using your school funds. We've raised this and we're okay. If you're using our school's name, then yes, I'm gonna have just as much involvement as you are. So make sure that's a definite. And then most importantly, do not fundraise during instructional time. If students are there to learn, which they should be, they should not be in math class selling candy and popcorn. They should not be doing that. We do not have any type of fundraising during the school day. If you want to fundraise, then school starts at 9:15. If you want to fundraise before 9:15, go for it. The school day ends at 4:15. If you want to fundraise at 4:16, then go for it, but not during the school day. And then make sure you're not competing with local businesses and child nutrition. So again, if, for instance, you have let's use cosmetology. That's a general one. You should not put your local cosmetology businesses or barbershops or auto mechanic companies. You should not put their livelihood at risk in order to have your students give very, very cheap relaxers or braids or car maintenance or haircuts, because that's gonna affect, you know, you need to have the partnership with your local community. You don't need to wedge those little barriers in there. They're gonna see that their clientele is gonna be dropping because they're going over there to you because you can give a $2 oil change because you have, you know, you're doing fundraising and you're hey, we're gonna do, our class is gonna do our auto class is gonna do a fundraiser and we're gonna give everybody $2 oil changes. That's gonna affect that man down the street that's doing that for his livelihood. So keep that in mind when you are doing fundraising. Okay, so that takes us to the end of this portion. Do you all have any questions before we go into human resource management?
At when the response for the first week's activities, one of the things, Daniel, we'll get just 1 second. My recommendation is don't sell anything. It's just a fool's errand. fundraise through ball games or activities at your school, things that draw your community in. Try to get out of the selling business if at all possible. And if you're going to sell, as Dr. Griffin Jordan said, try to do it cashless, Venmo, whatever, electronic. Try to get out of the cash business and try to get out of the sales business. Those are two. You got a lot of exposure for your job and your livelihood in those things. You're taking risks that you really don't need to take. So that would be my suggestion. Daniel, you had a question?
So when you're going back to the occupant health and safety and like scheduled drills and inspections, and that's supposed to be done by the principal, is that supposed to be done by the principal themselves, or can that be delegated and documented?
So we have always had the assistant principal and the custodian to do like the monthly fire drills. There's a form that you complete with your inspections, your 2-week inspections and your fire drill. And at the bottom of that form, the principal has to sign. So they would do it, and then they would bring it to me, review it with me, this light is out on the second hallway or whatever. And we would review it, and then I would sign it and submit it. That's how I think most districts probably are doing it. You can delegate it to an assistant principal, but in the end, the principal signs off on it. But recently, our district has said they want the principal to actually go and do the actual checking each of the lights throughout the school and being the one to stand there with the fire, doing the fire drill and doing the time and, telling everybody, okay, we're all clear, you can come in. So that's the difference with my district. I think it's good to know. And like I said, when I was an assistant principal, I did it. So I do know, but every administrator should know how to do all of those steps, whether you're a principal or an assistant principal. But many schools are, as a principal, you can delegate it, but just make sure at the end you do see and sign off on it.
It has to be a certified administrator. It has to be at least an AP.
Mm-hmm.
Has to be at least. You can't just let your custodian do it.
Not by itself. Nope.
Nope. You can't do that, and you can't assign a teacher or the safety committee. You must have somebody with an administrative license, eyes on. Again, some districts will allow the APs to do it. As Dr. Griffin Jordan said, in Durham, they're now requiring the principal. Generally, it's like anything, it's all fun and games till somebody gets their eye put out. I mean, that's kind of the way it works, is we let APs do it until, something goes wrong. And then, the correction is, all right, principals, now you got to do it. But it's got to be at least an AP. And as I've told you before, I think that's going to be, as the new AP, that's the dirtiest job you got. You'll do it. That and bus duty and everything that nobody else wants to do, that'll be you. And so, it can't be delegated to the custodian or the teacher safety committee or any of that. That's kind of like somebody mentioned in one of their reports that they put, I think it was in the other class, they put little safety vest on elementary kids and told them they were crossing guards. I don't think so. That may be the single dumbest thing I've heard in a while. That's just the liability of that is just it's so palpable you can see it. We're trying to keep you from losing your house here. And if you do dumb things like that, you deserve to lose your house. I hate to say that, but that's just dumb. I would not do that. I would not ever send a custodian. And again, if my district said, principals, you do this, then doggone, I'd do it. And that form that I gave you, the assessment inventory, that mirrors what your district will have. And down at the bottom, you got to sign off. And I certainly wouldn't put my laziest AP on it, even if I was allowed to do that. I'd put the one that was the operations person. I wouldn't put the one that that's always a day late and $1 short, because every 2 weeks it's got to happen, and it better be documented. First thing when something goes wrong in your building, first thing they do is pull those records, and it comes back to you as principal. So just like when discipline is processed, and we talk about that in a couple of weeks, again, APs do it, but the principal's responsible for it. It says right so in the manual. regardless of who processes it or puts it in the system, principal's responsible for it. And so, that's a great question, Daniel, but it again, it goes back to what your district requires you to do, but it can't be less than an AP, and it can't be a teacher process and discipline. I mean, there's certain roles that only administrators can do. And I know people were shorthanded, and I know that, we catch as catch can sometime, but there's some things that are just too important to delegate to anybody else. And, when you're talking about these things, due process, when you're talking about money, you better be on top of that stuff, because that's where you get that's the stuff that, unemployed and lose your house kind of thing.
Yeah, that was my concern, is not to be a micromanager, but if it's ultimately my liability on the line, I'd rather put eyes on it myself than
Absolutely.
just somebody else.
Yeah, the safety of your building, because safety. I'm telling you, when I became principal, how many years ago was it? 34 years ago when I became a principal. I was an AP before then, but I became principal in 1989. So when is that? 34 years ago. Safety wasn't even a thought of. It was just discipline, and butts, buses, and books. That's all you did is, but now safety is first. And so building safety every day, not just active shooter drills, but building safety every day. And always, even back then, the number one was budget. It's still number one. It may be two now, but it's either one or two. Is making sure that that there's no funny business with the money, that every one of those 4 different funding streams, whether it be federal, state, local, or school, they all have very much restrictions, very heavy restrictions on them on how they. So I love you as my bookkeeper, but I'm gonna check every month. I'm gonna go over the balance sheet myself. I actually had lunch in Charlotte today with a lady, and she was involved in a freak accident the weekend before school started. It's been a lot of years ago. Well, I said a lot. I think we were about 9 years ago. And she couldn't be there to the first 2 or 3 months of school. She was literally in a hospital bed. And her bookkeeper wrote checks, and she just signed them because they'd bring them by the hospital or the house. And she was held accountable for that. And the bookkeeper and the PTA president together absconded with all the money. I mean, all the money. And she was held financially responsible, and she was in the hospital, folks. She got broke both hips at one time. Freak accident. Didn't matter. You signed it. You signed off on this. These people stole it, but we're holding you accountable for it. Very, very, very sad situation, but that's how. Like you say, Daniel, if you're on the line, you better put eyes on it. You better be right there with it. I'm over stressing this, and I'm beating a dead horse here, but I can't tell you enough times. You got to check on your building and the safety of your people, and you got to make sure the money don't get absconded with. Those are the 2 biggies. Nothing bigger than those 2.
And just to add on about your building, we have a work order system as everyone does. If there's something that is broken, that could be hazardous, then you need to put in your work order. However, even though you've done what you're supposed to do and put in your work order, that does not stop your responsibility from making sure a student our staff member does not get hurt. If there's a big sinkhole somewhere in the basement, on the basement floor, and you put in a work order and say, well, I put in a work order. I know that the kid fell in there and twisted his ankle or broke his foot or something, but I did my part. I put in a work order. No, that's still on you, because why did you allow students to still go down there where they could be in harm's way? That's why you have these, the wet floor signs, the roping off, the stop signs we have in the schools now. If there's an area that does not need to be occupied because of something that could be hazardous, then you need to not occupy that until just putting a work order in is not enough. You still have to make sure every place that your staff and students walk within and outside of your building is safe, regardless. It's going to come back on you if it's not, whether you've told the head of maintenance or not, it's still going to come back on you.
And that goes double for when your buildings are under construction. And that's probably 95% of what Dr. Griffin Jordan was just mentioning is. Now, remember, these contractor people, they don't have any liability. That's on you. And that they'll do what's most expedient and cheapest for them. Oh, we were doing this or we're doing that, but our kids and folks aren't safe. That's not their worry. They're trying to complete projects on time and under budget. I mean, I had to run down one time. They had pulled a corkboard off the wall, and the contractor was down there with a acetylene torch burning the glue off the wall with kids in the building. Yeah. Well, why are you doing that? Well, we got men here working. No, you can't be doing that. I physically had to remove them from the building. Harming our kids. I mean, they did the craziest stuff. They were supposed to build the exterior walls and then do the interior demolition. Nobody was looking. They just took a backhoe, went up to the building, and knocked the side of the wall off right out and up in the mountains. We nearly froze to death that winter. They will do whatever the shortcuts that they can do to make the construction people, and it'll be you that's on the line for it if somebody gets hurt. So if you even don't think, well, we were under construction and that, they've rerouted this or did that, and the cars and the buses are together. That's your responsibility. And the district will, the people at the district office, they'll hide when it's time for the responsibility to be passed around. They'll hide on it. We didn't know that was happening out there. They'll all have amnesia. They'll just be struck dumb. So it's going to be on you. And you better know what's going on with your building every day, especially if there's any construction ever. Those guys are the worst. They are absolutely the worst. They're just a walking hazard. So you better know that, and that you better know that it's going to be on you, not on them.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
So, and this just goes back to what you all were saying about, it's on the principal. What if, at the beginning of the school year, you have a principal and they have put all this stuff in place, and then they are snatched out of school and put somewhere else, and another principal comes in? Now, does what the old principal did fall on the new principal?
Yes. Yeah. When you signed that contract to go, you assume all the responsibility and liability that goes with it. Now it's on you. And if you don't maintain the existing structures, that'd be on you. That'd be on you. They got to follow through on all the plans that are put in place. Now you can make a new plan at the end of the next year, for the next year, but you have to follow through on the plan that was made for that year. When the gong strikes and we have that first work day, the opening of school plan, it rolls out, and that's what we stick with that academic year till next office when we roll the next one out. You assume that plan, that school improvement plan, you assume that budget, you assume that professional growth plan, whatever was in place when the gong strikes on that first required teacher work day. That's what we do for the rest of the year. There's no changes, there's no amendments, there's no nothing. This is the plan. The bell schedule, everything, who's teaching what, where, and when, it all stays in place. And you're responsible to follow through with it. That's a great question. That's exactly right. That's why principals don't like to move during the year. We prefer to move at the end of the year, where we come in 2 weeks early in July when we're actually supposed to be on vacation. We review all that stuff and try to fix anything right quick before the teachers come. I've done that 3 times, by the way. I went in on my vacation in July when I was going to a new place and pulled all that stuff out to make sure there wasn't anything I couldn't live with, and made sure I got it changed before that first work day, because after that, it's set in stone. That teacher handbook comes out, that might as well have been Moses brought that down with him, carved in stone. That's what happens from there on the rest of that year. That's the law too, by the way. So if you want to change something and you're going as a new principal, you better give up your vacation and get there in July. You got 2 weeks generally, or 3, to get all that stuff fixed.
Just keep in mind that they're going to say, who is the principal? And you can't follow up with, well, I've only been the principal for 2 months. that it's you, it's just you.
Yeah,
So
when we
like
do
Dr.
it-
Lamb said, you gotta go in, you're doing your vacation, and if you, during the middle of the year, then you flow with it, make it work. And you take your notes all that
Mhm.
year. It will be so easy for you once summertime comes to pull your notepad out and adjust for that following year.
Mhm. Now, when we do the interviewing sessions, if you've not been in one, I'll do one this semester. I always do an interviewing, and one of the things you got to understand is I have, Dale's top 10 for first faculty meeting when you're new AP or new principal. But one thing you got to understand is that under administrative law, you're only new until lunchtime of the first day. After that, you're either part of the problem or part of the solution. You get one morning, to be footloose and fancy free when you own that new job, but lunchtime, it's on you. You better know that. The liability sticks with you. So if you get there and you don't like it, you better leave before lunchtime.
Okay. Well, we're going to move right along to managing human resources. Let's see. All right. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you for a little bit about the circle of life for administrators managing human resources. As you can see the circle, you have recruit, hire, evaluate, and support. And as you will see as I go through, it's a continuous circle over and over again. Okay, so first we're going to talk about hiring, the hiring process. When you have a vacancy, you start with there. A teacher lets you know that they are going to move to Indiana because they're getting married and they're leaving and they teach English. What do? You need an English teacher. So you're going to contact HR, let them know you have received resignation from your English teacher and you need to hire an English teacher pronto because you have EOCs that you need to prepare for. So when you're contacting, hopefully you have a contact person in HR. I do. She is wonderful. Every time I need her, she's there. You're going to give her detailed information. So you're going to tell her, I need an English teacher. You're going to work with the HR person. It may be a district thing for the job requirements, the skills and the license required. All that information is going to go on the job posting. Salary information will be later. Start date will go up there, and the contact name will be included in the posting. Salary information is usually general. It will say something like based on state salary with local supplement or something like that. But they'll get their detailed salary information if they're offered the job. So you would put the start date. Sometimes it says immediately, but then sometimes if the person's going to stay for 30, 45 days, then you'll put the date after that person leaves. Job is posted. You have to monitor that posting to see if there are any viable candidates that apply. So you're going to review the candidates to determine who will be selected to interview. You have to schedule your interviews. Schedule as many highly qualified candidates as your time will permit. And I know that, everything is like, I need it now, I need it now. If there's any way possible to keep the posting for a while, at least a couple of weeks, that would be great to see who would be the best candidate to interview. Minimum of 3 interviews. I must say that during these times of a teacher shortage, getting 3 highly qualified, experienced candidates within a couple of weeks to a month time frame is very challenging. try your best to do that. If that's not possible, then you just make sure you're communicating with your HR representative to let them know, okay, I don't have 3, I have 2. The next one says that they've been working at the grocery store as a lead cashier for 10 years, but they don't know English. So can I not interview that person? So take what you can get, as highly qualified as a candidate as you can find. Please interview those. You have to call your references, 3 professional references, one being where they're coming from, their supervisor. They're always guiding questions. We have 6 questions. One talks about your relationship with that candidate. One talks about their strengths, their improvements. How do they get along with their students and coworkers? Are you aware of any negative reports? Any reason why they should not be working with children? And then that question, would you rehire her or him if you could? That speaks a lot. In my time as principal, I've learned that everybody may not be as honest as you would like them to be. So when I call for references, I'm expecting, if you're telling me, oh yes, their strengths of this, oh, they're great. Oh yes, I'll rehire them. Oh no, negative, nothing. You've got to try to read between some lines. If they have had a different job every year for 6 years, and this person's like, oh, they're just the wonderful thing, that person, that principal supervisor may be trying to get rid of them. So keep that in mind. I've experienced that. And you sit back and you're like, I know goodness well, this person that I'm sitting up here looking at in my building is not that person that the principal told me they had in their building. It can't be the same one. So make sure you ask those questions. Make sure you look at the resume yourself. You can pick up on some things by looking at the resume and the jobs that they had. Did they not list one of their supervisors? Why? Sometimes I understand it's conflict of, personality conflicts. Everybody doesn't get along. But ask them, why? I noticed that you worked here for 5 years. Why didn't you list this, your supervisor here? And it's okay. Sometimes you don't get along, but you need to pull that out of. You need to ask those questions. Very important. And I found that out personally. It's very important to make sure you're hiring the best for your position, for your school. So once you have found that candidate, that perfect candidate, you're going to confirm with them that they're interested in the position. You're going to let them know that you contacted their references. If there are any other questions that you want to ask them at this point. If they would be interested in working with you. Let them know in advance, if you say yes, this will be the expectation. You will need to start on this date. The general stuff, our teachers are expected to be here from this time to this time. And if they are in agreement, then you are going to tell them that you are going to recommend them for hire. Please note, you do not hire anybody. You recommend them for hiring, and you let your HR support person know that you're recommending that person for hire. And here are the 3 references we interviewed, and here are the 3 references.
All right, before we go any further, can you go back? Just let me do the legal part right quick.
Yes.
Federal law, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission sets the guidelines for hiring. That would be the substantive due process. Procedural is you got to follow all the steps that you see on the screen. Now, understanding that who does what, where, and when varies from district to district. Let me say that again. These are all the things that have to be done. But now, who does them is the procedure. We follow EEOC guidelines in terms of what we're going to do to hire somebody, but it varies. I worked in a very poor district. I had to do everything. I didn't have a person in HR. I had to post it. I had to interview. I had to do background check. I had to do it all. I worked in Charlotte. I didn't have to do any of it. All I had to do was say, send me 3 candidates to my HR analyst. And then that was it. I didn't even have to call, I didn't have to do references. I didn't have to do anything. Somewhere in between those two is your district. That's why your second activity, the one for this week, is find out what the process is in your district so that you will know what responsibilities you have as a principal. You can't assume somebody else did it. You got to know what your role is in this hiring process. If not, you violated federal law and it will go very bad for you. You'll get sued by somebody who didn't get the job. You know, you'll hire somebody that's a child molester and they'll come back on you because the references weren't done and the background check. You got to know what is my part in this particular, and it changes when you go from, it's not the same. Well, I learned it at the last district. It's different in every district that you go to. It will be different. The actual substance of the due process will be the same, but who does it will vary in every district. You got to know that. Don't assume because you learned it one time, you know it forever. You got to start all over every time you go to a different. And sometimes when you get a new superintendent, it changes. And sometimes when you get a new school board and the money gets shifted around, all of a sudden they put more and more on the principal to do because we hire less and less people in HR. Again, that's part of that local, it has to be paid for out of that local, that local school system budget has to pay for those HR people. Charlotte, they would hire you an HR analyst. Other places didn't even, you wouldn't have known what an analyst was. I worked in one county, the poorest county I ever worked in had 2 people in HR, 2. They had 2 people. You got nothing, 0. I worked in Charlotte where they had a whole building full. You didn't have to do anything there. That's the dichotomy, folks. And then I can't stress enough. Principals don't hire, superintendents don't hire, school boards hire. So don't ever say, don't even mention the word hire or I'm offering you a job. You simply tell somebody I'm recommending you for a job. Is that okay with you? I'm going to advance you on and recommend you. And they can say yay or no, I'm not interested in the job or I'm interested. And so it's just you're gauging an interest when you say I'm going to recommend you. Is that okay? You know, are you interested in this job? If so, then I will recommend you. And if they say no, I don't want to work in that slaughterhouse. I don't like it when I was over there. Then you move on. But you don't offer jobs, and you don't imply that because you recommend that that will be accepted either. There may be several other steps. It might be one of those places that because they're trying to save money, they don't do a background check until somebody is recommended. Now, again, in Charlotte, they wouldn't send you a candidate unless they'd already vetted them, drug tested them, they'd already background checked them, they'd already reference checked them. They did that with all candidates in Charlotte, but they had plenty of money. Most districts now, because they're so cash strapped, they don't do anything until somebody gets recommended, and then they start background check, drug test, reference check. They don't do anything. They don't want to spend any money. And so I can't tell you the number of people that you would think that, you know, she's so sweet, little girl out of college, and pardon me for being pejorative and old and cranky, but, you know, butter wouldn't melt in her mouth. She was so sweet. Come to find out, she'd been in jail in college, you know, disturbing the peace, public drunk, assault on officer, all those kinds of things. You just don't know, folks. I'm telling you, you just don't know. So, yeah, you better know what you're doing. This is another one of those things. You better, whatever the process is, you better follow it, and don't assume because you're enthralled with them that they're just automatically that they're automatically going to get through the process. It doesn't work that way. And so make sure that whatever you have to do, that you have done your part and you've done the very best that you could do to make sure that this is somebody that you would want to expose your other faculty and your students to. But that's the difference again between substantive due process, what are you supposed to do as a district to hire somebody, and procedural, who does what, where, and when of that substance. Got to know the difference. All righty, we're moving.
All right. I would just like to note, you mentioned how Charlotte Mack does everything for you. Now, we're not quite there. However, Durham has started to bring on international teachers. So when they go to recruit and they bring international teachers back, they do all that. So what they present to the teachers to the principals are the teachers with their resumes and a video. They've already done the background check. Everything that you say Charlotte does on a regular basis, we're getting there. We do that
and that's where you'd like to get.
That's where we want to get, definitely.
Yep. Trust me.
It makes everything so much easier.
Oh,
because
God.
he's fine. So I'm like, I would love for him to work. He's checked out, background check. His education credentials have been checked out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So where we are now, once we recommend that person, then that's when they do the background check. They check licensure checks, their transcript, all that stuff before we can actually bring them on. So it kind of takes a lot of time.
And it's kind of backwards. I mean, don't waste my time with somebody that you know down the road we can't hire. I've got 1,000 other things to do as a principal. It puts an inordinate burden. Even doing reference checks as a principal puts an inordinate burden on you time-wise, and then it delays the process when they got to go through all that. I mean, be working it this year round. Don't just wait till summertime when we're going to hire a bunch of people for the fall and start this. Have people all year round doing this. This is for district people, but you just can't believe how much time that this will burn up if your district doesn't do it for you. And it's in an order, but you can't shortcut it because you're better off to have nobody than a bad body. So you can't shortcut this system, and you don't want to get sued when you didn't follow the rules and somebody else that didn't get the job sues you. And you don't want that to happen either. So, I mean, I know it's a lot of time, but this is not one of them things that you can skip. And you got to know what your district does. And if they put this burden on you, you might want to think about working in another district. I mean, that's kind of the way that goes. I mean, if you feel like you're being taken advantage of, that would be a part of what I'd be deciding if I want to continue to work with these people, that they're putting all the burden and the liability on me all the time. And I don't really have the time to be able to, what are they doing all year long? Going to lunch. I mean, everybody's got a role to play. If there's people there and it's not getting done and it falls to you to have to do it, that's part of your decision making about, is this really my future in this district? Or, how long can, I'm taking a lot of risk here. How long can I stay here before it catches up with me? That's real talk, folks. I mean, I moved from one poor district to another poor district, but it wasn't all on me there. And that was part of the reason why. It wasn't just that. I mean, they didn't help you with anything, substitutes, bus drivers, custodians, nothing. It was all on you. And gave you no help. And it was just, you never got to sleep. Thankfully, I was young then and dumb. I'm just old and dumb now, but I knew that I can't work here. I'm a detail person. I'm an operation, and I never sleep because I want to get it all done. And they were fine with me working day and night to try to do it. And then so I decided that maybe my future's not here in this district. Those are the kind of real things, conversations that you have to have, and you have to be self-aware enough to know that this is not going to get any better. There's a lot of liability working here. They'll blame me. They'll all hide when there's any blame to pass around. They'll all be hiding. and I'm telling you, hiring, you can get some real messes on hiring. Get people in. And I have a story to go with that, but I'll save it for another time. Dr. Griffin Jordan needs to move on.
Okay, so just to reiterate what Dr. Lamb mentioned about the superintendent hiring, and the board, well, the superintendent recommending and the board hiring. This is the general statute, states it shall be the duty of the superintendent to recommend and the Board of Education to elect all principals, teachers, and other school personnel in the administrative unit. So that's that chain of command. So you're going to interview, you talk with that candidate, you're going to talk to your HR representative and say, this is who I would like to recommend. They're going to go to the superintendent and all the other principals with all the other principals candidates. And the superintendent then will present those candidates to the Board of Education. Usually after the meetings, the board meetings, they have closed sessions where they discuss personnel. That's when that usually happens. So when you make your recommendation to HR, there are things that happen. And like Dr. Lamb indicated, sometimes it happens before usually the recommendation sometimes is the last thing, not the first thing. So you have to make sure that there's a criminal background check done. Our HR handles all of these things down here. The candidate submits results of a drug assessment. They provide instruction, they're provided with instructions for all necessary employment forms needed, like their transcripts, their prior employment information, et cetera, anything like that. And the salary will be established based on the appropriate salary grade and experience. So all of that takes place right before the person actually is hired. Once the board approves the recommendation for hire, the principal may contact the new hire and begin the onboarding process. So once they have been approved, everything's been done, drug tested clear, they actually have a transcript that says that they were an English teacher, the onboarding process will begin. If waiting on board approval, and this is what we've had to do at some points, we could start the person as a substitute teacher. If we're waiting, sometimes those background checks take just forever. So if we're waiting, that is an option that we can do in the interim. Okay, so now you have your teaching staff. Everybody's here, you've hired everybody. Now you have to monitor and evaluate, make sure they're doing what they're supposed to do to best support your students. There's NECES, North Carolina Educator Evaluation System. This is a link to it. You can go, we'll make sure we post this so you can go back to look at this. This has the rubrics. It has all the things that you will need to know and follow as you're going through the evaluation process. It talks about your pre-conference conversations, your post-conference conversations, the actual observation, and what you should be looking for, and what you need as a teacher, your teachers would need to be doing and showing you that they are competent in the different types of skills that they're competent in. Within the evaluation process, there is training at the beginning of every single school year. Your teachers have to go into this NECES platform and indicate the orientation date that they've received all the training that they need for the school year. They have to complete orientation. They have to do a self-assessment. All this is at the beginning of the school year. They have to take that evaluation rubric and assess themselves. And as a principal, you need to look. It's very important for you to know what they think of themselves. It will save you some headache, because if you have a teacher who you know is proficient and you look and they've rated themselves distinguished all the way down, that's a conversation that you can go ahead and have in the very beginning. And you can kind of start talking to them. Okay, in order to be distinguished, and you may have to like dig deep. In order to be distinguished, these are some of the things that I'm going to need to see. And a lot of times distinguished is like you're doing stuff for the state district, you're presenting for the state department of English or math or something. You're doing things outside of the classroom to be distinguished on a constant basis, not just one time, but on a consecutive constant basis. So those conversations need to be taken on and had early on. So it's very important for you to look at those teachers' self-assessment so you can see how they're rating themselves. And then on the flip side, you're going to have some modest, very modest teachers that they're like doing amazing things. They're leading SGA, they're leading school improvement. They're speaking at conferences, representing your school well, and then they're like, proficient, so they just, those are the ones that need a little bit of, boost up, you're doing good, sometimes you'll find there's some teachers that are going to do it anyway. And then there's some teachers that are staff members that, they need a little pat on the back sometimes. So you just have to know who you're working with. Component 4, pre-observation conference. This is where you're sitting down and you're going to go over your self-assessment. You're going to talk about your PDP, their professional growth plan. Do you have a school growth plan? Do you have a department growth plan? Do they have personal growth plans? How are you going to set that up? As a principal, you need to know what you're going to be looking for. You can't just go into the meetings with your staff. What is your plan? You have to have a plan. They have to know that you are expecting X, Y, and Z from them. Okay, then you have your observations. Depending on who your teachers are, will let you know how often. And I think in one of the later slides, it goes into detail about if it's abbreviated or if you are a comprehensive teacher, comprehensive cycle teacher. And then your post-conference. After you conduct your observation, you're going to have a post-conference no later than 10 days after your observation. If it's more than 10 days, you need to do another observation because this has been too long. And 10 days is very lenient. That's actually 2 weeks. You're going to observe someone, and then in 2 weeks, you're going to call them back in to talk about that one lesson, and they've had probably 20 other lessons since then. Try to make it in your schedule to get back to that person as soon as possible. If you can schedule it out, schedule their observation, look and go ahead and see when their planning period is. That next day, if possible, go ahead and take the time to meet with them, share their observation with them so that they can look at it the same day. And then you'll be able to have that good conversation with them the following as soon as possible. Okay, so which staff members do administrators evaluate? So you're thinking, okay, teachers, you evaluate your teachers. Yes, definitely you evaluate your teachers. There's so many other people that you might need to evaluate, just depending again on your district. For instance, you will of course evaluate your teachers. You may have instructional specialists or coaches, depending on your district, you would be evaluating them, or if they are district coach, then there will be someone at the district level to evaluate them. Your school media coordinators, your librarians, you're going to be evaluating them along with any tech facilitators. School psychologists, we give input because we have a shared school psychologist and a school speech language pathologist. We don't have one for our school. We have one that's shared throughout the district. So I would not evaluate. I would submit my comments to the district, and then the district evaluates those positions. Social worker, we have a social worker, our school counselors, they're all evaluated by the principal. And if you look down, these are the standards that you use for evaluation. So teachers, let's look at the first one. That is the most common list of standards, those 5 standards. Demonstrate leadership, your respectful environment, you know what you teach, you know how to relate it to students, and then you reflect on your practice, you grow and learn. That is standard for teachers. If you kind of look across the board, standard 1 typically is demonstrating leadership no matter what position you're in. Teachers are not the only ones that need to be leaders. All of your staff members need to be able to demonstrate leadership. 2 is talking about your learning environment. Look across, no matter who you're evaluating. Some of the actual elements are going to be different, but the standard pretty much is going to be based on your learning environment and developing a rapport with your students and a respectful learning environment and a safe learning environment. 3, this is your content knowledge. Do you know your content? Are you implementing comprehensive 21st century ideas and programs? Are you applying the skills within the educational setting that you were taught? Are you facilitating and implementing 21st century comprehensive school counseling programs? Are you implementing the comprehensive approach to speech language development? So this is you and what your skill is and how well you present it and how well you know it. So if you have a beginning teacher, more than likely, if this is their very first year teaching, they've never taught before, just coming out of college, you probably will not have distinguished on 3. They have a lot to learn. They're going to be learning the content. It's a lot to learn. Always remember that proficient is what is expected. If you can meet proficiency, you keep your job. That is the standard. Anything over that is the staff member going above and beyond. We don't just give out distinguished and accomplished. Don't just give it out because they're a great person. They have to meet those specific elements within the standards. Number 4 is facilitating learning for students. So this is all of your supporting students and student learning. How innovative are you with your teaching? How well are you with making sure students, making sure your learning is relevant for students? Have you looked into different cultural aspects? Are your students represented, their cultures represented in the teaching that you're doing? Can they relate? And then of course, 5, reflect on the practice. Everybody should always reflect on their practice actively. No one is perfect. There's always going to be a learning curve for everyone. I reflect on my practice all the time. And you want to make sure your staff members take a look back, look at this lesson. How could I have made that better? They can even, get some support from students and some feedback from students on their lessons. That is a reflective practice to make you even better at what you're doing. Okay, so there's a standard 6. So this is the accountability factor. So performance rating for standard 6, a teacher's rating in the 6th standard is determined by a student's growth. So this is what you get when you're looking at your report card grade. Do you meet growth? Do you exceed growth? Or do you not meet growth? This is based upon, like in high school, it's EOCs, below is EOGs, end of grade, end of course. Those teachers, they're testing students. They start at a certain point through something called EVOS. They're projected to be proficient, or they might not be projected to be proficient. If they're projected to get a 2 and you can support them and help them to the point where they can get a 4, that is amazing. You have exceeded growth in that respect. However, if with all the data, they're projected to get a 4 on that test, and then they actually get a 2, then you have not met growth. So that's that standard 6 accountability. And at the bottom, the State Board of Education approved the use of the Education Value Added Assessment System, is called EVAS, to measure the impact of a teacher on student learning. EVAS determines growth by analyzing a student's predicted score compared to the actual score. So they're looking at what the student has done in the past, and they're predicting what they'll make in the future. And so that's where you'll get that your school meets or exceeds growth, because they take all that information and say, this is where the student should be. You've got to get them there. Then you meet it. But your goal is to get them past where they should be. And you'll have all that information at the beginning of the school year. You'll be able to look. That's where your data team and your school improvement team, your leadership team, everybody needs to come to the table and look at those EVA scores. That's how you're going to schedule those students' classes. That's how you're going to get them the extra support they need. You're going to want to make sure that you can meet and exceed those expected scores. Okay, when and how often should staff be evaluated? Okay, so certified staff, 3 cycles. Standard cycle, experienced teachers, it will include formal observation, a pre-conference. That first observation always should have a pre-conference, always. Then you'll have 2 more formal or informal observations and a summative. So total 3 observations, and then your summary observation will be at the very end. This summary observation, you're going to look at all the observations you've had to compile your summary observation, and that is going to be what is seen year to year, is your summative evaluation. Then you have abbreviated evaluation. These are for teachers employed more than 3 years, and that can be met by the evaluator conducting 2 informal, these are minimum of 20-minute observations, and rating the teacher only on professional teaching standards 1 and 4. So if you have an experienced, like a veteran teacher, they may be on the abbreviated cycle, except when they are up for renewal. When your renewal cycle hits, you have to do the full evaluation. But if you're an abbreviated, aside from that, you're only going to be rated on standards 1, demonstrating leadership, and 4, making sure that you are connecting with the students and the students are learning in your classroom. And then you have the comprehensive evaluation. That's 3 formal evaluations and a peer observation and your summative. So these are for your newer teachers. You're going to have your 3 standard observations, and you're going to have a peer, maybe the department chair or someone else that you choose to observe them as well. And then you'll have your summary observation. For classified staff, this is like your data manager, record specialist, bookkeeper, etc. The evaluation process varies by district. What we do is we have a mid-year and an end of the year, and it stays in-house. If anyone asks for it, I can provide it for them. But these evaluations are just mid-year and end of the year for classified staff. Okay, so supporting. So we've hired, we've evaluating, now we're going to support the effort. Okay, so support and retain employees. Things to remember in 2023. Understanding the times, and right now, this is a teacher's market. It is what it is. But even though it is, please do not settle. Again, I've learned an amazing, dedicated, hardworking substitute teacher is better than an awful teacher, and quicker to replace and get rid of. Keep that in mind as you start your career as an administrator. Don't just take the first thing that walks in your door. Please don't do that. If you have an amazing sub that's dedicated to your school, you give them that staff shirt and you say, you know, you're one of us. Thank you for joining us. Can you go and relieve this teacher, or can you go and take that subject? Okay, so expect and prepare for turnover. Again, it is what it is. New teachers typically stay for 3 to 5 years these days. Try to hold on to your strong teachers. Some teachers will come and they'll stay for a couple of years and say, I want to go. You're going to say, okay, bye-bye. I wish you the best of luck. Others, you're going to be like, okay, so what, is there anything that we can do? Is there anything that we didn't do? What do you need? Do you need early planning? Do you need late planning? If you have a strong teacher that the students connect with and they're giving you results, good results, you need to try your best to keep them. Your veteran teachers will be more vested in the school community, and they typically will stay until retirement, which is another thing because we have a whole lot of people right now that are at that age. And long time ago, you know, you had teachers that taught you, your mom, your grandma, your great grandma, that teacher taught them all. Now, when teachers are hitting that 30 years and even 28 early retirement, they're coming out. They're like counting down. We all are counting down. We're gonna, you know, give our best, but once that time comes, they're taking retirement. So keep your veteran teachers happy as long as you can, but just know once their time is up, you can even start planning. If you know that you have a really good social studies teacher, but they only have 2 more years to retirement, you need to go ahead and start pre-planning, looking ahead. Now, what's going to happen in 2 years? Don't just sit there and let it come, because it's going to come and you're going to be stuck with no social studies teacher. Okay, so cater to your dedicated subs. As I mentioned, treat your subs like family. Invite them to the staff luncheons. They are, you know, keep them happy because you never know when you may need them. Okay, some things to never forget. Again, support your staff. Each district should have an employee assistance program. We do. And this is where you get legal assistance, counseling, anything to help you with life outside of the classroom. This is where you go. And districts should have that for if they want to keep their good employees. They need to have that for their employees. Teacher appreciation. Kudos and acknowledgements, teachers of the month, put little notes in boxes, random treats, food. We all love food. Surprise them with a luncheon or, you know, treats after school. Show them that you appreciate them. Teaching is a tough job. It's not getting easier. It's getting tougher. So please acknowledge that. Lead, don't micromanage. Allow teachers to lead. They can help support teachers who need to improve. You're not the only one that can go in and observe a teacher and give feedback. Spread the wealth. If you have a good teacher and you see that their classroom management is like superb. I mean, like the kids go in, they know what they do. They know they have a warm-up activity. They sit down, they have 5 minutes, then they transition seamlessly. Then you go to another class and you walk in and everybody's just swinging from the ceilings. And why not have that teacher observe your teacher that has excellent classroom management? Have them to go and see what happens there. You're not always the only one that has to do all this. Let your teachers lead as well. And then on the flip side, just because your teacher is not supposed to have a peer observation does not mean they can't have one. Let that teacher with the great classroom management do a peer observation on the other teacher and provide feedback. That's what, that's you're learning from each other. And then that helps that teacher that has great classroom management, that helps them get out of the classroom, grow, lead, and then that will help them on their evaluation ratings because they're helping the school. They're helping other teachers within the school. They're not just stuck in their classroom. Then practice what you preach. Be the example and hold yourself and others to high expectations. I asked my staff to give me, actually, we're graduating tomorrow. We have graduation. So we're finishing our school year. I've given them a survey, what has gone great this year, because I need to know what we need to continue to do. Then what would you change? Give me something that you would change or you would like to see different for next year. And I need that. I need that feedback, because there might be something that I think is going great. And if I get a whole bunch of feedback saying, no, that didn't work, then that's that reflective practice that we all need to do. And I tell them, I don't take anything personal. Whatever you tell me, I know it's in the best interest of the school. So please just give it to me. And they do. And we have that relationship where I can give it to them, they can give it to me. And we know that we are only trying to support each other and support our students. Okay, and lastly, recruit. Promote your school, even when you don't have vacancies. You never know when you will. So always promote your school. The worst vacancies are those that you don't know about. And the person's sitting there in your school and they know that they're leaving soon. Nobody knows. So always promote your school through paraphernalia, swag, social media, school improvement plan, fairs, presentations, teachers, student, and community supports. And always anticipate vacancies. Always try to have an ace in your back pocket. If there's a teacher who teaches multiple subjects, that's amazing. I try to get English and social studies and math and science. If someone has a dual certification, that is amazing. Go for the dual certifications. That is a great marketing piece for teachers to have at this point. Have your standard subs on call. And if there are teachers from other schools who that would love to work with you, stay in touch with them every now and then, send them, have happy holidays, just wanting to make sure you're okay, just to keep them connected in some way to your school, just in case that vacancy does come. And then when a teacher leaves your school, they'll leave through a resignation process that you have to submit to Human Resources. It could be a district change, career change, or retirement. Usually there's a 30 to 45 day hold. Make sure you submit that resignation form. And what I typically do is I really don't like to hold people if they don't want to be at my school. I don't want to make them be at my school. So I will let them know as soon as I get someone to come in to, give me a minute, let me push this out. If we can find somebody to replace you before that 45 days, 30, 45 days, then I don't mind releasing you early. I'm not going to make you stay there for the 45 days just because. If I can find somebody to replace you before then yes, I will support you in leaving. Transfers, process varies again with each district. We have a transfer application window, and that's when we can go on, and any staff member that wants to transfer, we can contact the principal, let them know that we're going to meet with them, and then we can interview that person to transfer for the following school year. Dismissals must be documented. You can dismiss for inadequate performance, neglect of duty, fulfill the statutory duties, insubordination, and failure to comply with the reasonable requirements of the board. You've got to document. And so that's where I was talking about earlier when I was mentioning sometimes you're calling references and they're like, oh yeah, they're great, perfect person, perfect teacher, because they didn't want to document the person out. So it's easier to just let them, make them miserable so that they can apply somewhere else, and then give them a good reference so they can get out that way. That's how it's done sometimes. But to be honest and have high integrity, it must be done this way. Give the person time to grow and give them time to get better in their practice. And then if not, then they would be documented out. And then the cycle begins again. So Once they're documented out, or they retire, or they transfer out, you have to hire. So that is the circle of life. And a couple last minute notes, remember that the teachers have a voice. And this voice is monitored and looked at. This is called the Teacher Working Conditions Survey in North Carolina. And I'm sure South Carolina has the same. This is where you're looking at time, facilities, your teacher and school leadership, PD, instructional practices and support, and community involvement. All of these teachers are every other year, teachers are asked to go in and complete this survey for the state. And my final thought, great vision without great people is irrelevant. So you can know what you want to do, be there, but if your people are not behind you and if they're not good and supportive, it doesn't matter because nobody will know your vision. And we can never fall short when it comes to recruiting, hiring, maintaining, and growing our workforce. It is the employees who make our organization's success a reality. Always remember that. So understand and embrace the cycle of human resource management life.
Great.
Okay.
Well, thank you. If you would be sure to email me both of your presentations and I will upload them under Zoom session 2. These
Okay.
updated copies from tonight. If you'll do that, I'll put them in our shell. Thank you all for being with us tonight. Continue to work on your OMA, your weekly assignments. Again, thank you, Dr. Griffin Jordan. Again, you heard it from a practitioner who does this every day. She's highlighted the important things, and we will see you all next week. Thank you for being with us tonight. Everybody have a good week.
Bye.
Bye.